Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Yeah,
Today, we are going to be diving into Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
a classic.
A classic indeed. And I feel like, we've talked about it a little bit in previous episodes,
hmm
but we've never really sat down and gone through the whole thing.
Yeah, a deep dive is definitely necessary.
Yeah, and I think, this is one that, so many people have read this book.
Right.
And it's really kind of sparked a lot of conversation around personal finance and, wealth building and that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think anyone who's even remotely interested in personal finance has at least heard of this book,
Right.
if not read it.
Yeah.
And it's been super influential over the last couple of decades.
Absolutely. So let's dive in.
Okay.
So I guess the book is kind of framed around this idea of Kiyosaki growing up with two dads,
Mm-hmm.
his own biological father, who he calls Poor Dad, and then his friend's father, who he calls Rich Dad.
Right. And those contrasting figures and their different approaches to money are like the heart of the book's message.
Exactly. And it's interesting, because I think a lot of times we think about financial success as being tied to education
Mm-hmm.
or having a steady job.
Right.
But in the book, Poor Dad was educated. He had a steady job.
Yeah.
But he always struggled financially.
Yeah, he represents that traditional path.
Yeah.
You go to school, you get a good job, you work hard, and you save money.
Right.
But he never really gets ahead.
Right. And then you have Rich Dad, who actually dropped out of school.
Mm-hmm.
But he built a business empire.
Right. He's the self-made entrepreneur
Exactly.
who takes risks and thinks outside the box when it comes to money.
And so it really kind of challenges those traditional assumptions about, what it takes to be successful financially.
For sure. It's like there's more to it than just following the rules and playing it safe.
Yeah. And one of the biggest takeaways from the book is this concept that rich people don't work for money. They make money work for them.
Mm-hmm. That's like the core idea.
Yeah. But what does that actually look like? I mean, it's not like we can all just quit our jobs
Right.
and expect money to magically appear.
Exactly. It's not about being lazy or avoiding work.
Right.
It's about shifting your focus from earning a paycheck to building assets.
Okay, so explain that a little bit more.
Yeah.
What do you mean by building assets?
So assets are things that put money in your pocket even when you're not actively working.
Okay.
Things like rental properties, businesses, stocks that pay dividends.
Okay.
Whereas a job is trading your time for money assets work for you.
Got it.
So in the book, Rich Dad buys this rundown motel as an investment.
Okay.
It's not glamorous, right?
Okay.
But he sees the potential to turn it into a cash-flowing asset.
Okay, so instead of just saving money in a bank account,
Mm-hmm.
he's out there acquiring income-producing properties.
Exactly. And that leads us to another key distinction in the book.
Okay.
Assets versus liabilities.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people get tripped up on.
Oh, for sure. It's a fundamental concept, but it can be tricky.
Yeah. So break it down for us. What's the difference between an asset and a liability?
So in simple terms, an asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out.
Okay.
Now, most people think of their house as an asset, right?
Right.
But if you're paying a mortgage, property taxes and all that stuff,
Right.
is it really putting money in your pocket?
That's a good point.
It's more like a liability in that case.
So it's really about the cash flow. Is the money coming in or is it going out?
Exactly.
So even a house could be a liability if it's constantly draining your resources.
Right. It's not about what you own. It's about what's working for you financially.
Okay, so that mindset shift can apply to all sorts of things.
Absolutely.
Cars, expensive gadgets, even certain types of investments. So how do we start to differentiate between assets and liabilities in our own lives?
Well, you got to think about whether something is generating income or costing you money. For example, that fancy handbag you love. Is it appreciating in value or just sitting in your closet?
Right.
A rental property, on the other hand,
Yeah.
can generate monthly income even while you're asleep.
So it's about looking beyond the initial purchase price and considering those long-term implications.
Exactly.
Is this thing going to help me build wealth
Mm-hmm.
or is it just going to drain my bank account?
Right, and that leads us to another key theme in Rich Dad, Poor Dad,
Okay.
the importance of financial education.
Right.
Kiyosaki argues that traditional education doesn't really prepare us to handle money.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're taught to get a job, work hard, save money,
Mm-hmm.
but not necessarily how to make that money work for us.
Exactly. Like how many people learned about investing or taxes in school?
Right.
Not many.
Right. It's just not part of the curriculum.
And that's the gap Rich Dad was trying to fill.
Oh.
He was all about seeking out financial knowledge on your own through books, mentors, real-world experiences.
Right.
He even said you learn more from your mistakes than your successes sometimes.
That's interesting.
Think about that motel investment.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't just buy it. He learned how to manage the property deal with tenants, navigate the legal stuff.
So it was a hands-on education.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That experience was just as valuable as any textbook.
So it's not just about reading books.
Right.
It's about actively seeking out opportunities to learn and grow your financial knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But where should people even begin?
Well, understanding basic investing principles is crucial.
Okay.
Knowing how to evaluate different asset classes, manage risk, make informed decisions.
Taxes are huge, too.
Oh, absolutely. Learning how to optimize your taxes legally can save you a ton of money.
Right.
It's amazing how many people just ignore that aspect.
Yeah, they just accept whatever tax bill they get without exploring any potential deductions or strategies.
Right. And then there's the whole world of debt.
Right.
Understanding how it works, the different types, how to manage it responsibly.
Because that can really derail your financial goals if you're not careful.
Absolutely. High-interest debt can be a major obstacle to building wealth.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess Rich Dad, Poor Dad really emphasizes taking control of your finances and being proactive about your financial education.
Exactly. It's about empowering yourself to make smart choices.
And not just relying on traditional systems or assumptions.
Right. It's about challenging the status quo.
And thinking outside the box when it comes to money.
Exactly.
Like that. All right, well, let's take a quick break and we'll come back and dive into some more of these key concepts.
Sounds good.
So it seems like Rich Dad, Poor Dad is really all about shifting our mindset when it comes to money.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Rich Dad wasn't afraid to take risks, challenge conventional wisdom.
He saw opportunities where other people just saw obstacles.
Exactly. And he believed that the biggest risk was not taking any risk at all.
Right. He wasn't afraid to fail.
And he saw his financial setbacks as learning experiences.
Exactly. Like he said, losing is part of winning.
That's a good one.
Yeah. You got to embrace those setbacks.
So how do we start to overcome those fears? I mean, what are some of the most common financial fears that you see?
Well, I think fear of failure is a big one.
Okay.
A lot of people are so afraid of making a mistake that they avoid investing altogether.
Or they just play it super safe.
Right.
Yeah.
They stick to those low return investments that barely keep up with inflation.
Yeah, so they're more worried about losing money than they are about making it grow.
Exactly. And that really limits their potential.
Right. And then there's also the fear of the unknown, right?
Oh, yeah. That's a big one, too.
Like not understanding how investments work or feeling overwhelmed by all the financial jargon.
It can be intimidating.
Especially when you're first starting out.
Right. But that's where financial education comes in.
Exactly. The more we learn, the less scary it becomes.
And as you gain experience, that fear starts to fade away.
It's about replacing that fear with knowledge and action.
Exactly. Rich Dad always said financial knowledge is power.
I like that.
Yeah, knowledge gives you the confidence to make informed decisions.
So speaking of knowledge and taking action, you mentioned earlier that Kiyosaki developed this model called the cash flow quadrant.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So the cash flow quadrant is basically a framework that illustrates 4 different ways of generating income.
Okay.
So you've got employee, self-employed, business owner, and investor.
So it's kind of like categorizing different types of work or income streams.
Exactly.
And I'm guessing most people probably fall into that employee category.
Yeah, that's right.
They trade their time and skills for a paycheck.
They're working for someone else's business.
Okay. And then what about self-employed?
So that includes like freelancers, consultants, small business owners.
Okay.
They're their own boss, but they're still very involved in the day-to-day operations.
So they're still trading their time for money.
Your sense, yes.
So where does the real wealth building happen in this quadrant?
That's where the business owner and investor quadrants come in. Business owners create systems and structures that generate income without their direct involvement.
Something like companies with employees.
Exactly. They've got established processes that run the business.
Right.
And then investors use their money to buy assets that produce passive income.
Like dividends from stocks.
Right. Or rent from properties.
So that's where the whole making money work for you concept really comes into play.
Exactly. It's about building systems or leveraging assets that generate income without you constantly having to work for it.
And so this cash flow quadrant, it's really just a model.
Right. It's a simplified way of looking at things.
But it does highlight those different paths to financial freedom.
And it shows where those wealth-building opportunities often lie.
So I guess the question becomes, where do you fit into this quadrant?
Right.
And where do you want to be?
It's about understanding your current situation and then setting goals to move towards the quadrants that align with your vision.
So it's not about judging where you are now.
No, not at all.
It's about having that roadmap for where you want to go.
Exactly. And then taking those steps to move in that direction.
Financial freedom is a journey, not a destination.
Well said.
All right, this has been incredibly insightful, and I'm feeling very motivated to take a closer look at my own finances.
That's great to hear.
But before we wrap up, I want to ask, are there any other, actionable takeaways from Rich Dad, Poor Dad
Oh, yeah, tons.
that our listeners can start implementing today?
Okay, well, first off, building your financial literacy is essential.
Okay.
Read books, listen to podcasts, take courses.
Immerse yourself in that world.
Exactly.
I love that you emphasize continuous learning.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process.
It's not just about gaining that knowledge, but also about staying curious and, keeping up with the ever-changing financial landscape.
Absolutely, because things are always changing.
Right.
Okay, second, make a conscious effort to shift your focus from liabilities to assets.
Okay.
Start thinking about how you can create passive income streams.
Even if it's just a small side hustle or something.
Right, every little bit helps.
I love that. It's about taking those small, consistent steps to change your trajectory over time.
Exactly.
Building wealth is a marathon.
It's not a sprint.
Not a sprint, for sure.
And I think maybe the most important thing is developing that long-term mindset.
Okay.
Building wealth takes time
Right.
and consistency.
It's not a get-rich-quick scheme.
No, not at all.
It's about making those smart choices and sticking with them.
And being patient.
Yeah. Patience is key.
For sure.
And discipline.
Absolutely.
It's about staying the course, even when things get tough.
Right, because there will be ups and downs.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's not always going to be smooth sailing.
And I think it's important to remember that Rich Dad, Poor Dad is just one perspective.
Right.
It's a starting point for your own financial journey.
It's not the be-all, end-all.
Exactly.
Take what resonates with you and leave the rest.
It's about finding what works best for you.
For your individual circumstances and goals.
Right, because there's no one-size-fits-all approach to financial success.
Definitely not.
And it's an ongoing process. Your financial journey is going to evolve as you learn and grow.
And as your circumstances change.
Right.
So be adaptable.
Yeah. Embrace the challenges, celebrate those wins.
And keep learning.
So before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question.
Okay, I like it.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad offers a lot of valuable advice, but it's ultimately up to each individual to take action.
Right.
And apply these principles to their own lives.
You got to put in the work.
Exactly. Reading the book is just the first step.
The real magic happens when you start implementing those ideas.
So here's my question for our listeners.
Okay, get me.
Now that you've explored the core ideas of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, what's one concrete action you can take this week to start applying these concepts to your own financial journey?
Ooh, I like that.
It could be something small, like creating a budget or tracking your spending.
Right. Or maybe it's something bigger.
Yeah.
Like exploring a new investment strategy.
Right.
Or having a conversation with a financial advisor.
Exactly. The key is to just take that first step, no matter how small.
Just get started.
And remember, it's a journey.
Not a destination.
Well said. All right, on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
It's been a good one.
We hope you found this exploration insightful and inspiring.
A lot to think about.
Remember, building wealth is a journey, and every step you take brings you closer to your financial goals.
You got this.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
See you next time.